god of death. Okay, so hear me out, because I know what you're thinking. You're thinking alone in the dark, whispering names like a mantra. Simple enough, right? But what if it wasn't that simple? Beneath all the blood and survival, that most of us just missed it. What if Arya Stark missed? She was performing a ritual, a prayer, an offering to something ancient and all-consuming was, on some deeper level, a prayer to the god of death himself. Stick with me, because once you see this, you cannot unsee it. And it changes everything about how you watch Arya's story. Let's go back to the very beginning of it. Not the pilot, not the Red Wedding. Go back to the moment the list actually starts taking shape in Arya's mind. She's lost everything. Her father's head just rolled off a scaffold in King's Landing. She's alone, disguised, scrambling to survive in a world that has absolutely no mercy for little girls with swords. And what does she do? She doesn't just cry. She doesn't just run. She starts naming names. Cersei, Joffrey, Island Pain. The list grows over time, picking up new names like wounds collecting scars. And every night, every single night, she recites them. Like clockwork, like a ritual. Now here's what I want you to sit with. Rituals don't just happen by accident. When you do something every night, in the same order, with the same intention, building toward the same outcome, that's not just habit. That's devotion. That's the structure of prayer. And in the world of Game of Thrones, prayer has weight. Prayer has consequence. And this is where the theory starts to take real shape. The many-faced God is one of the most fascinating religious concepts in the entire Game of Thrones universe. The Faceless Men, based out of Braavos, worship this deity, and their core belief is this. Every religion in the world that has a god of death is actually worshiping the same god. The drowned god of the Iron Islands, the great shepherd, the Lord of Light's opposite, and this is the one that matters most for Arya's story, the Stranger. The Stranger is one of the 7 faces of the Faith of the Seven, the dominant religion in Westeros. And the Stranger is not a comforting figure. It's not like the father or the mother, who represent justice and mercy. The Stranger represents death, the unknown, the transition from life to whatever comes after. The Stranger has no gender, no fixed form, no warmth. It just is. It exists at the edge of every life waiting. And in artwork and iconography from the faith, the Stranger is always depicted as inhuman, almost monstrous, something that doesn't fit neatly into the world of the living. Now, the many-faced God's followers believe the Stranger is the many-faced God. They're the same entity, different masks, same face underneath. So when Arya, a girl raised in the Faith of the Seven, starts whispering names every night, names of people she wants dead, who exactly is she talking to? And here's where it gets interesting. She's not praying to the Father for justice. She's not praying to the warrior for strength. Night after night, she's calling out to death. She's asking death to come. She's naming its future gifts, one by one. That's not revenge. That's an invocation. And the show reinforces this in a way that feels almost too deliberate to be accidental. Because right around the time Arya's list is becoming a Sandor Clegane, the Hound. Now most people see the Hound as the grumpy, violent, reluctant guardian figure, the rough mentor, the cynical older man who protects Arya while pretending not to care. And yes, that's all true. But there's a detail, one single detail, that the show puts in front of you, and most people just let slide right past them without a second thought. The Hound's horse is named Stranger. Let that sit for a moment. The Hound, a man who embodies brutality and death, who has spent his entire life as an instrument of violence, rides a horse named after the face of death in Westerosi religion. That's not a coincidence. George R.R. Martin does not do coincidences. The showrunners knew what they were doing. You don't name a horse Stranger and not mean something by it. So what does it mean? Well, if the Stranger is a manifestation of death in the Faith of the Seven, and if the many-faced God is the Stranger, then Sandor Clegane, riding a horse named Stranger, arriving in Arya's life at the exact moment she begins her nightly death prayers, becomes something more than a companion. He becomes a messenger, an avatar, a physical embodiment of the very force she's been unknowingly calling out to. And the show leans into this in ways that go way beyond symbolism. Think about what the Hound actually does to Arya over the course of their journey together. He doesn't protect her innocence. He destroys it, methodically, brutally, completely. He shows her what the world actually is. He kills in front of her. He explains to her why kindness is a weakness in a world like this. He forces her to sit with death, to look at it directly, to stop flinching. He even, in one of the most brutal scenes of their arc, forces her to watch him nearly beat a man to death for food and not feel bad about it. He is stripping her down, piece by piece, removing every soft part of the girl she used to be. And what's left after that process? Something sharper, something colder, something that has been shaped by death into an instrument of death. This is the part most people miss. The Hound isn't just toughening Arya up for survival. He's preparing her. For what exactly? For the role she's been unconsciously volunteering for since the moment she started whispering those names in the dark. And here's the thing. He doesn't do this consciously either. He's not aware he's playing a role in some cosmic religious drama. But that's how the many-faced God works, isn't it? The Faceless Men believe that death moves through people, that the God of death uses instruments, human hands, to do its work. The Hound is one of those instruments. And for a season and a half, he is Arya's teacher. And then, and this is crucial, Arya removes the Hound from her list. Now, the easy reading of that moment is that she's grown, that she has mercy, that she's choosing not to kill him because she's seen something human in him. And there's truth in all of that. But consider another reading, one that fits the theory perfectly. You don't pray for the death of a god. You don't add the divine to a mortal hit list. Once Arya consciously or unconsciously recognizes that the Hound has served his purpose as the stranger's instrument in her life, she removes him. Not because she forgives him, but because he's no longer on the list. He was never supposed to be. He was always something else. And then she crosses the narrow sea to Braavos and walks directly into the House of Black and White. Okay, so this is where the theory locks in completely. Because Arya doesn't just stumble into the Faceless Men. She seeks them out. She has the coin. She knows the words. Valum Morgulis. All men must die. And she crosses an ocean to learn from the very people who worship the many-faced God as their literal religion. Now think about what that means in the context of everything we've been discussing. A girl who has spent years praying to death every single night has now physically walked into the house of death's priests and said, "Teach me." The many-faced God apparently listened. The show never says this directly, but the entire structure of Arya's arc feels like a story about a girl who prayed so hard, so consistently, so devotedly, without even knowing she was praying, that the God of death sent her a teacher in the form of the Hound, and then opened a door to his temple and let her walk in. Her training in Braavos is brutal and strange and deeply spiritual. She has to give up her identity. She has to become no one. She has to surrender Arya Stark completely. And the Faceless Men believe this is what death requires. To serve death, you cannot be attached to life. You cannot have a self. But here's where Arya breaks the pattern. Because she never fully becomes no one. She keeps coming back to herself. She keeps her sword, needle hidden. She refuses to surrender completely. And after everything, after the training, after the blindness, after the trials, she says it out loud. I am not no one. I am Arya Stark of Winterfell, and I'm going home. And most fans see that as a rejection of the many-faced God's influence. As Arya breaking free from the Faceless Men and reclaiming her identity, which is true. But here's the flip, and this is the part that makes the whole theory sing. Maybe it's not a rejection. Maybe it's a completion. Maybe the many-faced God never needed Arya to be no one permanently. Maybe the whole point was to give her the skills of no one. The face-changing, the poison knowledge, the ability to move like a ghost, while keeping the identity of Arya Stark as the weapon itself. Because what does a God of death need? It needs instruments. People who can move through the world and deliver death where it needs to go. And Arya Stark, a highborn girl from Winterfell with a list of names and a sword called Needle, is a far more powerful instrument than any faceless assassin could ever be. She has motive. She has history. She has a name. She goes home, and she starts completing the list. The Fry massacre is where you feel the full weight of everything we've been talking about. Arya walks into the twins wearing the face of Walder Frye, poisons an entire hall full of men, and takes off the mask to make sure the last man standing knows exactly who did this to them. The last thing you'll ever see is a Stark smiling down at you. It's theatrical. It's deliberate. It's almost ceremonial. She could have done it quietly, efficiently, like a proper faceless assassin. Instead, she does it like a ritual, like an offering. She makes sure the death means something. She makes sure it carries her name. She's not hiding behind the many-faced god anymore. She is delivering death on behalf of House Stark, but doing it with the tools, the skill, and the cold precision of someone who was forged in the Temple of Death itself. She is both things at once, Arya Stark and an instrument to the god of death. And then the Night King happens. Oh, this moment is the one that reframes literally everything. The Night King, the embodiment of death itself in the most literal, existential sense possible, is standing in the Godswood. He has shattered every defense. Theon is dead. The living are overwhelmed. And then a figure comes flying out of the dark. A girl who spent years whispering names. A girl who crossed the world to train with death's own priests. A girl who was forged by an avatar of the stranger. A girl who just finished a list of names that reads like a decade of devotion to mortality. And she kills death. Now here's the interpretation that blows the whole theory open. The many-faced god, the god of death, doesn't want the Night King to win. Because the Night King isn't death, as the Faceless Men understand it. He's not the release, the mercy, the transition. He's obliteration. He's the end of all story, all memory, all meaning. The many-faced god, in every religion that worships it, offers death as a gift, a release, something that happens one life at a time, with intention and meaning. The Night King offers only erasure. So perhaps, and the show never says this directly, but perhaps, Arya wasn't just sent to kill the Night King by the Lord of Light's plan alone. Perhaps she was sent by the god of death, the real one, to protect death itself from being made meaningless. To be the answer to a prayer that she herself started whispering when she was 11 years old in a cold cell, reciting names she wanted death to take. She prayed to death. Death answered, and then death needed her to return the favor. What makes Arya Stark one of the most extraordinary characters in modern television isn't just her arc from scared little girl to lethal assassin. It's that the show, whether George R.R. Martin intended every detail or not, built her journey with so much thematic coherence that it holds up to this level of analysis. The nightly list as ritual, the Hound as the stranger, the training with the Faceless Men as religious initiation, the return to Westeros as the instrument made real, and the Night King's death as the ultimate payoff of a decade-long prayer answered. Arya never stopped being a Stark, but she also became something that the Starks could never have predicted, something the Seven Kingdoms didn't have a word for. She became the voice of a prayer and its answer at the same time. She was the one who asked death to come for her enemies, and the one death ultimately trusted to protect the meaning of mortality itself. The list was never just revenge. It was devotion. It was faith in its rawest, most desperate, most human form. A little girl in the dark, alone, refusing to let death be meaningless by naming it, claiming it, directing it, until death looked back and said, "Okay, you're ready. Now go." Jaqen Hagar said it best, and you probably missed it the first time around too. A man does not choose. A girl chooses. She always chose. She just didn't know yet what she was choosing for.